Welcome to Recap Our Studio.
A guy called Terenzio races into a Brazilian airport in the opening scene. He seemed to be anxious and in a rush. Most people would assume he is missing a flight, but this couldn't be farther from the truth. He asks the helpline for a ticket to the west, but the closest one is 2 hours away. Nonetheless, he purchases a ticket to cross the terminal. At the same airport, a well-known influencer named Enos is video chatting with a buddy in New York when she chokes and passes out. Enos is concerned, particularly because she can't assist her outdoors. Viewers of television see that the TV reporters and live program hosts have passed out in front of the camera. Not only that, but a full block of individuals are unconscious on the ground. Except for Terenzio, the audience thinks it's a comedy. What exactly is going on? He declares that it is time to act and hurries to the airport. When a guard is distracted, Terenzio grabs his pistol and motions for everyone to get out of his path. He runs to catch a flight to Moscow that departs in a few minutes. When he enters the plane and holds everyone at gunpoint, just a few people have boarded. The pilot is absent, and Matthew, the co-pilot, refuses to assist the terrorist. A bullet strikes Matthew's hand and injures him as they battle for the pistol. Outside, the passengers are panicking, and Gabrielle, the flight attendant, is attempting to keep them calm. Terenzio emerges from the cockpit and inquires whether there is a pilot on board. Sophie gets up, despite the fact that she is merely a former helicopter pilot. Terenzio orders her and Matthew to board the plane with the rest of the passengers. Because of the bullet, the avionics are damaged, and no one aboard the aircraft can communicate with anybody outside. When the aircraft takes off, Sylvie and Matthew attempt to persuade Terenzio, but the guy is resolute. He claims to be an officer attached to NATO who knows something they don't. When pressed, he confesses that the sun's beams have become lethal. The sunlight the following day will kill everyone. Even those who remain at home. This has already begun in Eastern nations such as Japan and Korea, and if the sunlight catches up with them, the aircraft will be the next target. Matthew and Sylvia do not trust him and feel he is insane. Terenzio also admits that he may seem to be an imbecile, but insists that he is not. Matthew's hand is severely bleeding, which might lead to complications in the future. Laura, one of the passengers, works as a home health nurse for an elderly man suffering from dementia. Because she is the sole medical expert on board, she accepts responsibility for assisting the pilot. They don't have a sewing kit, so they use a hot knife to seal the incision. Matthew yells in agony, and the passengers become even more terrified. Matthew understands that if they begin to protest, everyone's life would be jeopardized. As a result, he informs them that they will land at a new place per Terenzio's request before continuing on to their intended destination. Matthew is hoping that the fighter aircraft would come to their aid since they were kidnapped at gunpoint. However, Sylvie has the impression that they are on their own. A passenger called Ayaz overheard them discussing the sun and suspects the captain of deception. Suddenly, an Arab passenger begins coughing and passes out. Ayaz pretends to assist him and then steals Terenzio's rifle in the process. Ayaz orders that Terenzio be confined inside the toilet, and Matthew is asked to disclose the truth. The pilot explains that they are landing in Iceland because Terenzio wants to travel west. The terrorist will be apprehended, and the others will be released. He also discusses the sun and how Terenzio believes it will kill humanity. This causes a frenzy among the passengers. They begin to recollect weird events that occurred before to boarding the airplane and are concerned about their family. As captain, Matthew calms everyone down and accepts the burden of saving them all. Later, he attempts to land at an airfield in Iceland but receives no signal from traffic control. When they get a good look at the ground, they discover that multiple aircraft have collided and that people are fleeing. They ultimately realize Terenzio is speaking the truth. However, since the runway is closed, they are unable to land, and the jet only has enough fuel to fly west to Scotland. As a result, the captain makes the decision and hopes for the best. He pulls Terenzio from the toilet so he can inform everyone what is going on. He reveals that he found the sun by listening in on his elders' conversations. He has no idea why this is occurring or when it will end. All he knows is that they must fly away from the sunlight if they are to live. Meanwhile, the Arab, a guy who had previously passed out, is still on the floor. He is having trouble breathing and is on the verge of passing out. With his last breaths, he claims to have ingested jewels. Laura, the nurse, tries unsuccessfully to rescue him. At the same moment, they make an emergency landing in Scotland, where Matthew breaks the aircraft seconds before it collides with a wall. When they go outdoors, their phone begins to ring with alerts from their loved ones. The internet is awash with reports of lethal sunshine. Half of the planet has dead, and the other half is about to die. The airport is deserted since everyone who could flee has done so, and the others are hiding in dark locations in the hope that it will protect them. However, news reports indicate that people are dying even within bunkers. Suddenly, 3 RAF military personnel approach them and beg for assistance. With barely 45 minutes till daybreak, they decided to gather essential supplies and fly west. Jacob, an aviation engineer, is one among the passengers. He wants to go back to his pregnant wife and rescue her, but he is requested to stand aside for the sake of the passengers' safety. They take off again after gathering supplies and filling the plane's tank. One of the service members is a pilot, and he proposes they fly away from the equator to escape being overtaken by the sun. Their next destination is Canada, where they will refuel the aircraft and repair the radio. After a time, the internet is restored, and their phones begin to ring. In Brussels, they hear the last words from their loved ones who have died. Then a guy discovers an article claiming that the reason of the tragedy is the polarity of the sun. Another traveler, Horst, is a climate expert who understands what the polarity of the sun entails. He explains that the sun's magnetic field flips every 11 years, but no one understands why. Because it has no big impact on the world, little study has been conducted. However, the strength of the reversal has waned during the last several decades. As a result, Horst believes the reversal has grown far more forceful in the other way. If what he says is correct. People are dying immediately because the world is being bombarded with gamma radiation wherever the sun shines. They are unable to confirm the idea since the scientists who wrote the study are all likely deceased. Ayaz then comes across a news article claiming that the RAF military personnel they picked up are Afghan militants. They were apprehended and deported to their home country at the airport. Outside, one of them becomes enraged and pushes the elderly guy with dementia. It kills him and earns the passengers' contempt. Terrorism is okay, but shoving elderly people is not. Sylvie informs Matthew of the news story and abandons the terrorists once they arrive in Canada. They arrive a few minutes later and have 2 hours until daybreak. Several victims of the sun are scattered across the city. Terrorists are instructed to hunt for radio repair components at the local store. They agree, but only if Gabrielle and Jacob accompany them. The issue is that Jacob is aware of the plan, but Gabrielle is not. As a result, while they're at the store and Jacob locks the terrorists up in a room, Gabrielle refuses to accompany him. Jacob wastes no time in attempting to persuade her. He eventually makes it to the airport despite being pursued by terrorists, but Gabrielle is left behind in the city. Terrorists may strike a window with a gunshot if the aircraft takes off without her. Fortunately for the passengers, it merely causes a fracture, which will not shatter provided they keep a constant altitude. Dominic, a terminally sick child, is also on the aircraft. Ayaz attempts to talk to him, but his overprotective mother, Zara, tells him to go. They get a radio transmission from someone in Hawaii. The talk is cut short, but they presume that some survivors are still alive since they are sheltering in an underwater bunker. Matthew is eager to go to Hawaii as soon as possible. However, Sylvie believes that going there because of an ambiguous message would be foolish. Meanwhile, Terenzio is enraged that the captain gets to make all of the choices. Everyone decides that they will vote to decide. When things begin to slow down, many alarms sound at the same time, signifying an aircraft problem. After investigating the issues, Matthew discovers that one of the terrorists who had been trailing the jet earlier had somehow hooked himself to the landing gear. They will be unable to land if he continues there. As a result, Matthew resolves to fly as high as possible in the hopes that the heat and lack of air would bring him down. However, due to the pressure differential, he overlooks the broken glass. It snaps, wreaking havoc on the interior of the aircraft. Things fly in the air as the occupants prepare for impact. Matthew rapidly lowers the plane's height, and Jacob closes the window with a wooden block. Everyone calms down for a while, but Dominic has difficulties breathing since his respiratory tube flies away. Ayaz devises a strategy and constructs a breathing tube out of the oxygen pipe. Zara feels both grateful and regretful that she was nasty to Ayaz earlier in the day. At this altitude, the captain informs everyone that Hawaii is no longer a possibility since they would never arrive on time. Landing on an Alaskan island would be the most practical alternative. Everyone must be prepared when they land since they will only have 20 minutes to get to the bunker's site. Ayaz was in the bathroom when he had a seizure. It barely lasts a few seconds, and he believes it is due to excessive blood loss. When he arrives outside, he does not inform the others. He is asked what he intends to do with Terenzio. He permits the person to accompany them to the bunker since he does not want to condemn him to death. They arrive at a Bulgarian airport and split into two groups, each traveling in a different car. Sylvie drives the first vehicle and leads the way, while Ayaz drives the second. However, he has another seizure on the way, leading them to crash. The first automobile has already gone away, and the others will not be able to catch up in time. Sylvie makes a right at a crossroads and comes to a half-open gate. When a passenger touches it, the energy sends him flying. Furthermore, it turns out that they must keep pushing a button in order for the gate to remain open. Terenzio volunteers to wait for the others while Sylvian walks inside to redeem himself. Sylvie binds him to the stand before leaving so he won't betray them. It also confirms that he will be released only once the second group arrives. Ayaz and the gang, on the other hand, take a left at the crossroads and arrive at a similar gate on the opposite side of the dam. They climb up and pass the entryway using their garments. Finally, they all make it to the bunker's door. Despite the fact that they chose separate exits. Finally, the passengers are greeted by military personnel who welcome them inside and assure them that they are secure. Terenzio is alone, praying to God for pardon. As the sun rises, he faces it and requests that it do its best. To find out what happens to the surviving passengers next, watch the second half of our channel recap our studio. Thank you for your time.